Well, I'm glad to be here with you guys today. My name is Brennan Washington. My wife and I have owned a farm above Atlanta called Phoenix Gardens since 2005. We started our operations. And I'm currently the Southeastern Outreach Coordinator and 1890 Land Grant Liaison for Southern SARE. And in that position, I work with 1890 land grant universities, nonprofit organizations that work with farmers, and directly with minority and limited resource farmers in 12 southeastern states, US Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. So a little bit about myself. Like I said, we started our farm back in 2004, began selling commercially in 2005. 4 or 5 years ago, if you mentioned urban agriculture in most USDA meetings, you got thrown out the room. It just was not viewed as a legitimate form of agriculture, and I'm happy to say that that has really changed over the last few years. Our farm is located exactly 30 miles due north of Atlanta Hartsfield Airport in Gwinnett County. We did a lot of work around farmers markets and farmers markets development. I founded the Georgia Farmers Market Association, which is now in its 3rd year of operation, served on the board of Southern SARE, Georgia Organics, Southern SARE, and was just recently named as a fellowship to the Business Alliance of Local Living Economies, which is BALI, where we'll be looking at how to incorporate rural agricultural projects to support local economies. But I'm here to talk to you about the promises and pitfalls of urban agriculture. So like I said, we've been doing this for quite a while. And we've seen a lot of great strides for urban ag being recognized as a legitimate form of agriculture. We're seeing increasing yields in many areas as production methods improve. In some areas, we are seeing the fulfillment of the promise of addressing food deserts. We're also starting to see in many of these urban ag areas the spinning off of other local food system components. As the movement matures, introduction of new technologies, which I'll cover, and the identification of urban emerging markets. So that's a picture of my farm. We have 3 high tunnels. We grow on 2.5 acres. Really known for intensively planted farms. We don't plant anything on our farm unless we can get a minimum of $10 a square foot out of it. And we're actually looking to triple that this year. 2015, our house burnt down and we had to shut our farm down for approximately 18 months. And one of the first things we did was have a permaculturist come in and do that farm design that you see there. And our long-term goal is to make our farm a living laboratory for sustainable agriculture in an urban environment. So some of the things that we put in is some really neat erosion control measures. The second phase of the project will be the installation of a 12,000-gallon rainwater harvesting system, and just a lot of other neat stuff that we're going to be introducing to farmers who work in small-scale urban environments. So this isn't going to be, yes?
Are you 4 seasons?
Yes. The question was, are we 4 seasons? Yes, we grow all year round. We also do a fairly decent-sized flock of laying hens, and we do broiler chickens twice a year. And some turkeys. So this is going to be more about conceptual. So one of the advantages of my job is I get to drive around the entire Southeast and I get to see a lot of stuff that's going on, not only in the Southeast but in other parts of the country. So this is just a high-level discussion of some of the stuff that I'm seeing and that I've seen since 2005 when we started this stuff and where I think urban ag is headed. So some of the promises of urban ag is neighborhood revitalization, increased access to fresh, healthy food, especially in food insecure areas, and enhance local food systems to include not only access to their food, but the processing of that food for farmers, and increase opportunities for retail sales, potential impacts on community health. Some of our very first supporters in urban ag and in the urban ag community, at least in a lot of parts of the Southeast, has been the healthcare community. They've really gotten behind a lot of urban ag initiatives. Identifying new market trends, specifically as it applies to new immigrant populations that are moving increasingly into urban areas and what that means for potential farmers who are farming in that areas, and increase urban and rural connections. So I'd just like to talk about a couple of farms that's doing this type of work. This is the Backyard Gardeners Network, was started by Django Mwendo. Django was actually an animator for Pixar, whose family was from the lower Ninth Ward. And after Hurricane Katrina, when she saw the devastation that happened down in that area, felt that she had to go back and serve that community. So the Backyard Gardeners Network, in addition to growing local food on lots throughout the lower Ninth Ward in New Orleans, also does things like doing community plantings, teaching healthy eating classes, and that type of thing. When you go down there, the lower Ninth Ward still needs a lot of help, but this is the start of some ideas that are really starting to germinate down there. There's also another operation down there called Let's Grow that's really producing a significant amount of food for that community that still has a great many challenges facing them. And they farm mainly on lots, urban lots. So small-scale urban lots is what they're doing, as well as helping people develop agriculture within their own properties, backyard spaces, that type of stuff. This is Footprint Farms out of Jackson, Mississippi. That's Cindy Ayers there. Cindy was a former investment banker in New York City and got tired of financial rat race. Her family owned some land in Jackson, Mississippi, and apparently at some point in the family's history was discriminated against by the local school system. So they had a lawsuit. She now owns 300 acres in Jackson, Mississippi proper, where she raises vegetables, goats, sheep. She has a very strong youth program where she's bringing in folks who are actually working on the farm, and she's worked with Food Corp, but she's bringing in a lot of these folks from disadvantaged neighborhoods, and she actually has a true farming business there. You can see that load of sweet potatoes that she pulled off of her farm. She started out with 1 high tunnel. I think she's up to 7 now in that area. This is HABESHA Works out of Atlanta, Georgia. HABESHA runs an outstanding urban ag training program where they run people through just an aspect of how to become an urban farmer, and they teach them all aspects. They recently were just awarded one of our education grants from Southern SARE to build more sustainable ag components into their urban ag training program. An interesting thing about HABESHA is that they're making connections with urban ag and international communities. So for example, they'll take a bunch of their farmers over to Ghana every year to work on the projects, both the young people and farmers coming out of their program. They go over to Ghana once or twice a year where they have a lot of projects going on over there. Georgia Farmers Market Association has done a lot of work around healthy eating, and I'm a firm believer is just because you slap a farmer's market in the middle of a community does not mean that the community is going to get healthier. There are things we need to do, we need to know, and one is how to teach people to cook food properly. You know, my mom's 85, and if I handed her 2 pounds of collard greens, she's going right for a ham hock and all the other stuff that's traditionally been unhealthy for our community. So the Georgia Farmers Market Association has worked with urban farmers to not only grow these crops, but to make sure that people that these producers understand how folks can cook this food in a healthy and nourishing way. And they do that primarily through their Nourish program. And they do an education piece not only for the consumers, but also for the farmers, because sometimes farmers don't know this stuff. They don't know the different ways you could cook a beet, or you can cook kale, or you could cook collards. So the idea is to empower not only those farmers that work in those, not only those consumers that live in these urban areas, but also the farmers who are growing there. This is Good Samaritan Health Center in Atlanta, Georgia. They are a faith-based health center. They're basically a medical clinic for this community on the south side of Atlanta, I think they are. But they're doing something interesting. They have a 1.5 acre farm on their property, and they're one of the first groups that I know that are actually doing health-based, science-based studies around looking at metrics, different healthcare metrics such as obesity rates and that type of stuff. So they not only have the farming component, but they're also starting to take measurements on is having this farm and giving these people access to healthier food, is that actually translating into a healthier community? Peachdish. How many of you know about all the new meal prep, like Blue Apron? Peachdish, as you can see, is our version of Blue Apron in the Atlanta area. They buy an awful lot of food from farmers, and they've been on the vanguard of training our farmers around GAP certification, organic certification, and just getting farmers ready to sell into these larger wholesale chains. For our environment here in the South, these organizations have been a good first step for our urban farmers to get into selling into these larger wholesale chains. It's not as large as, say, a broker would be, but it's just enough of the process. And you can see some of the numbers that they're talking about. I mean, these folks buy 50 pounds of parsley a week during the summer, and they came to me and asked me to grow them some parsley, and I planted 4 by 16 beds, and I cut it, and I didn't even come close to 50 pounds of parsley. So, so they're helping us identify opportunities for urban farmers who may have smaller spaces, but are looking for opportunities to become more profitable. New technologies. We're seeing a lot of this happen in the urban areas. That picture in pink, I was invited by the Northeast SARE Administrative Council to come up and speak with them. And we went on a farm tour, and this is actually some technology that was installed inside of a container where they're actually growing this food within the context of a small shipping container and then using it for a restaurant and using it for some value-added products that they're selling. Aeroponic towers are becoming more and more, we're about to put a tower farm on our location, but in terms of the technology and the efficient use of space, more people are looking at these type of things. And aquaponics I was on the fence with for a while as far as it being a sustainable production system, but it's really coming along. I've saw some outstanding installations in northern Mississippi and some various other areas where they're finally figuring out how to make that system work in a truly financially sustainable way. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about that, if you have any suggestions of resources of people who are doing that.
It's sort of hit or miss. There's really no person. A lot of people are getting their work out of some work that's been done in the Virgin Islands and the University of Hawaii. But slowly they're starting, here in the Southeast, we're starting to put together some resources. I just found out about a training program down in Albany, Georgia, where they seem to have figured out the economics, and that was always the problem with aquaponics. Does the economics make sense? And I still think we have some work to do on that. So that's all good stuff, right? I think so, especially when you're getting thrown out of USDA meetings 5 years ago. That's really good. But there's some potential pitfalls, too, that we need to talk about if we want to see urban ag grow. Gentrification is becoming a big problem. And, Karl Marx said that capitalism carries with it the seeds of its own destruction. And a lot of us are starting to wonder if that's the case with urban ag. I work with one of the first farmers to put a production farm on the grounds of an Atlanta-based school system because they wanted to get fresh, healthy food into that community, which was food insecure. Well, the property value started going up, and that farm was asked to leave. And it really had nothing to do. Some folks who were doing urban ag throughout Atlanta and some other places throughout the South where you can get a lot for $15,000 or $20,000 4 or 5 years ago. I know in Atlanta that's shot up to $700,000 for the same lot. So one of the things we need to look at when we're talking about urban ag is how do we prevent urban ag from becoming a tool of gentrification. Atlanta actually has written an urban ag ordinance. How many of you in cities that actually have an urban ag ordinance? Okay, can you call out some of the cities? Detroit, okay. St. Louis, okay. Okay, maybe after this we can have, because there's some other speakers, we can have a discussion about how you guys viewing it. I know Detroit's doing some good work around gentrification and stuff like that, but it is a problem. It is a real problem. I think not only urban agriculture in general, but sustainable agriculture needs to really start baselining its metrics. Yes, sir. Oh, 5 minutes. Needs to start baselining its metrics. Is urban ag a sustainable production system? We don't know. Jury's still out. We're not taking measurements on whether it is or not. Are those farmers profitable? Are they able to continue to farm in that area in a sustainable way? But we need to start collecting that data. And a lot of urban ag operations were started by nonprofits. And I work with a lot of nonprofits, and it's nothing against nonprofits. But a lot of times, it's a different mentality. And for some of this work, you need to come in with a true business sense. And I think in some, especially as it concerns stuff like food hubs, the early advent and the early involvement and the early funding concentration on nonprofits actually hurt us in a way. Okay, I told I got, so that's gentrification. Yes?
Do you have any data on how many of the farms are actually, nonprofit versus for-profit urban farms? You know how many for-profit urban farms there are in the country?
No, I don't. And that's one of the reasons I think we need to baseline this stuff, find out who's out there, what they're doing, what their legal status is, and that type of stuff. But this is some of the stuff we need to be tracking. Are we leasing their land in urban ag? Are the urban ag ordinances protecting our farmers? And what does a successful urban ag operation look like? Just like highly diversified, sustainable ag operations, even if they're rural, are much more different than, say, your traditional, conventional farming operation. The metrics are totally, that's why none of us small farmers buy crop insurance, because the metrics don't make sense to us. It's based on a commodity model. I got 5 minutes. That's my information. But to sum up, I really think that we've come a long way. And that the future looks bright, especially as it appears to marketing. One of the things I think we're missing, and one of the big promises and one of the big gaps that we're having is urban ag, in addition to growing food in urban communities, really has a pulse on the lifeline of the urban market, which can be helpful not only to our urban farmers, but to rural farmers as well. And I think we really need to encourage more of that lifeline. To have urban ag farmers be that gateway for rural folks into these urban areas.